Hey guys, it's Bree here at Blossom and Branch Farm, and today I'm going to talk to you about how I have two of my favorite flowers at the same time that normally you wouldn't have blooming at the same time. Dahlias and peonies. So normally dahlias and peonies are not blooming at the same time, at least not here in the Northern Hemisphere, and that's because dahlias really start blooming more toward mid to late summer. And peonies, conversely, are spring bloomers. So typically we're not gonna see those two together. So first, I'm gonna grab some stuff for our bouquets for tomorrow. We have a market here at the farm and we are beyond sold out because my website glitched and let me sell more bouquets than I meant to. So I have to really hustle and get all these bouquets made. So I'm gonna start harvesting. I'm actually gonna start with yarrow. We're gonna grab some yarrow. We're gonna grab rudbeckia, our blue glow echinopsis, some bee balm, monarda, some sunflowers, and we're gonna put the last of our peonies in these bouquets as well. So let's go, let's see if I can get it all done. And then we'll talk about how we have both dahlias and peonies at the same time. Now, a lot of times you might see these flowers together if, for example, they've been imported from somewhere else. For example, peonies, we'll often get Alaskan peonies a little bit later here. Okay, so now I have everything harvested. I'm going to show you how I'm going to build these bouquets and the other things that I have in them for today. And let's hope that I have enough for all my bouquets that are ordered. So I always start by kind of inventorying all of my ingredients. So I've already pulled everything out. I've made sure I've had enough peonies for each bouquet. I have enough snapdragons. I have enough yarrow, echinopsis, rudbeckia, and then I'm gonna start building. So typically what I do is an assembly line. This is not always an exact art when it comes to building a bouquet. Sometimes I'll add a couple stems or I'll remove a couple stems depending on how full the bouquet looks or how not full it looks, as the case may be. I have everything all laid out. I have my paper here, I have my stapler. The only thing I'm missing is my bouquet chopper because I didn't want to haul it all the way from the back of the storage container. I'm going to start by actually calculating out the cost for this bouquet because I priced them at $35, so I want to make sure I'm meeting that value. Now, that being said, peonies at this time of year are really rare, so I can mark those up a little bit. So I have a full bunch of yarrow here. So wholesale to a florist, this would cost about $12. So I have 12. I have half a bunch of snapdragons, so these would be 13. So $6.50 plus 12, I'm at $18.50 plus another $2 for this. 50 cents for my stem of asters. And then I have half a bunch of sunflowers and rudbeckia, so we'll say about $6 for this, plus my peony, which would probably be about $6 a stem at this time of year. Now I'm gonna start assembling this bouquet. So I'm gonna start by kind of the same way that I did in my last video where I was doing a little crisscross. I've got all my materials and I'm gonna go kind of quickly here because these are market bouquets. If this was a bridal bouquet, I would be going much more slowly and deliberately. But again, because this is for market, that means time is money. And the longer I take to make these, the less money I make. So I'm gonna just put all of these ingredients together. I'm mixing and matching as I go. Now I'm not putting dahlias in these just because I don't have enough for all of the bouquets that were ordered. If I can't put them in all of them, then I usually reserve them for a wedding instead. All right, so I'm just gonna keep building. You can see I'm still doing kind of the same idea where I'm going in with all of my stems kind of at this X shape. Now, if you have sticker shock from hearing that this is $35, that's probably because you're not used to flower farm prices. So really locally grown flowers should be a little bit more expensive because our costs are higher of production. Bucket. I put all my cut stems in here to compost. So as I mentioned, the costs are higher of production for a US domestic farmer because we had to pay wages. So our cost of living is higher. We also have labor standards that a lot of the countries where flowers are imported from do not have. So for example, Ecuador and Colombia, where they tend to pay their workers very little and they're in pretty tough working conditions. We can't really do that here in the US. And so our costs are higher for a lot of things. The other unfair advantage that imported flowers have over domestic flowers is that There are not the kind of regulations on chemical applications that US growers have. So imports tend to be really pretty heavily doused with herbicides and pesticides. There's our finished bouquet. And straight into water. So in addition to the fact that flower farms in the Latin American countries usually can get away with paying less, they also get away with being able to import without tariffs. So back when the US in the 90s was trying to win the war on drugs, they actually decided to start financing and subsidizing rose farms in Colombia, and that was in an effort to combat the cocaine trade. As part of that, they also cut tariffs so that those farmers would also have a market. So they started with roses and they cut the tariffs on roses first, which killed off most of the American rose farmers. So now I think that move of the tariff cut and subsidizing foreign greenhouses contributed to, I think it's 96% of American rose growers folding their businesses. So it's just so hard as an American flower farmer to compete with the prices that foreign growers are able to sell for. And even though it's a much less fresh product, obviously they're traveling for at least a week and sometimes two to get to the consumer. And so if you have sticker shock from a $35 bouquet, it's because that's really even actually low for what it costs for us to cover our costs, cover our insurance, cover our seed cost, cover our cover crop seed cost, any equipment, maintenance, property taxes. So I don't want this to seem complainy, that I'm not trying to complain about, you know, what American flower farmers are up against. I'm just trying to educate so that everyone kind of understands when you're going to a local flower farm why it's, even though you might think it should be cheaper than buying them at the store, it really should not be. And if it is, it's because the farmer is underpaying themselves. And unfortunately, what usually happens in those situations, so for example, because flower farming has become fairly popular recently, there are a lot of new growers who just want to get a foot in the door. And so what they tend to do is underprice themselves and they undercut other growers. And what happens is they usually end up not being able to survive because you just can't do that and not pay yourself. So unless you're growing flowers not for profit, most of those growers end up folding. And in the meantime, they've done some damage to the other more established local growers who are charging a little bit more. So anyway, that's my TED Talk about flower pricing. If you want to see more in depth about how we're wrapping and folding these bouquets, we have a whole nother video on how we do that. And I'll link it down below. And if I forget, like I usually do, then you can just look up bouquets on this channel. But basically what I do is I take a rectangular piece of paper, fold it in half, lay this down so the neck of the bouquet is on the fold, and then I bring both sides straight up, pinch at the neck, staple, and staple up at the top. All right, let's head out to the field because I'm going to tell you how I have both peonies and dahlias at the same time and give away all my secrets. Let's go. Now you might have watched our peony video from earlier this spring where we talked about how we store them for longer periods of time. A lot of that has to do with what stage we harvest them in. So as you'll recall, we harvest them at what we call marshmallow stage, where the bud is still closed, but it is starting to open, has just a little bit of give. So it's not firm like a marble, but it's also not really opening. We call it marshmallow stage. So by harvesting at that stage and keeping them in a fridge, something around 37 degrees, we're able to store them for up to 8 weeks. If you want to see more about how we do that, you can go back and watch that video. While that buys us some time, the other thing that helps is what we've done with our dahlias. So while dahlias are one of my favorite flowers, they also can be a little bit slow to get going for us here in the season. The thing that we have learned to do here in my zone 5-6 is to overwinter them. So overwintering dahlias typically is something that we do more in the warmer zones. But we've learned that when we use a lot of mulch and we tarp them to keep them from rotting, to keep moisture from getting to them. We're able to overwinter them, which means that they sprout earlier in spring and they do better. So it is mid-July now. Typically when I don't overwinter dahlias, they tend to be blooming from the end of July. So this is probably about 2 weeks earlier than my dahlias normally would be growing if I had just started them in the ground either from seed or from tuber in the spring versus overwintering them. So here we've got some overwintered ones now. To be fair, they're just starting to bloom, but I still am gonna have them at the same time as my peonies, so I'm really excited about that. So again, it's this combination of overwintering the dahlias to get them blooming a little bit earlier and storing the peonies so that we can extend that bloom season just a little bit longer. All right, I got them all done. And actually, I even had a little bit of extra so that I could make some bouquets for the guys who are here working on our workshop space. So they're getting the drywall done. I'm gonna show you what it's looking like so far, but that's gonna be the spot where we're gonna have all of our workshops moving forward. So all of our flower arranging classes and our gardening classes, when we need temperature control, are gonna be in this space behind me, which is also really conveniently close to the cooler. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this video today, seeing how we make some bouquets for our market and also seeing how we have both peonies and dahlias at the same time. What a world. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to like and subscribe. And we appreciate you guys so much. Hope to see you around here next time at the farm.